The San Francisco 49ers last year went 10-7. They went all the way to the NFC Conference Championship game before losing to the eventual Super Bowl champions, the Los Angeles Rams. And now we begin the start of the Trey Lance era in the Bay. And I've said this several times throughout this offseason on this podcast that I fully believe in Trey Lance as the starting quarterback for the 49ers. All of the criticism that I've heard from people in the national media when it comes to Trey Lance hasn't really made all that sense. I've heard people say that he doesn't have that it factor, which doesn't make any sense, because if he didn't have that it factor, I'm pretty sure the 49ers wouldn't have traded up so much to draft him as high as what they did. I'm pretty sure if he didn't have that it factor, they wouldn't feel so comfortable moving on from Jimmy Garoppolo, somebody who has taken them to 2 conference championship games and a Super Bowl. So I trust Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch's judgment when it comes to Trey Lance. And also, you got to look at it like this. Jimmy Garoppolo was a taxi driver. For Jimmy Garoppolo to be successful, he needed everything to go right. Great offensive line play, great players around him, and phenomenal play calling. And you can say, well, JT, doesn't every quarterback need a great situation? Yes, they do, but you do have quarterbacks who have certain limitations that having a great team can make up for. If you have a great play caller such as Kyle Shanahan, he can elevate the play of his quarterback. You see, an average quarterback is elevated by his team and the play caller. An elite quarterback is able to elevate not only his team, but the guy calling the plays as well. He can take a play that should result in a negative 5-yard gain and turn that same play into a 3-yard gain. That's what happens when you have an elite quarterback. And when you look at Jimmy Garoppolo, when the 49ers needed him to make big plays to win the big games in the biggest moments, he came up short more times than not. So if Trey Lance, you have a quarterback who has the arm to be able to make any throw, and he's an incredible athlete. And I think that Trey Lance is going to bring a different dynamic to the San Francisco 49ers offense that we haven't seen. In my best case scenario for San Francisco, is going to be 13-4. This defense last season under defensive coordinator DeMeco Ryans was phenomenal. And I think that this defense is only going to get better this year simply for the fact that they finally addressed the secondary. Last year, the front seven was really good, but the Achilles heel of the 49ers defense was their cornerbacks. Well, now you improve that. You bring in Travarius Ward, who was pretty much Kansas City's best cornerback. You have Emmanuel Mosley. You also are going to have Ambry Thomas, who had a little bit of an up and down rookie season last year. He had some highs. He also has some lows. You got Jason Verrett as well, who is always really good when he's able to stay healthy. But the thing with that is that, you know, he has been unable to stay healthy for pretty much the majority of his career. And then also you have Jimmy Ward at free safety. And then we already know about what this defensive line brings to the table. You got Nick Bosa, Arik Armstead, and then I think that Javon Kinlaw finally is going to be able to put it all together this year and have a breakout season and be the player that the San Francisco 49ers saw when he was coming out of South Carolina not too long ago. Fred Warner, Dre Kinlaw make up one of the best linebacker tandems in the NFL. You also have Ajir Aziz from FAU. I'm sorry if I butchered his name. I should know better simply for the fact that this is a FAU alum. So my apologies. But overall, you know, I think when Trey Lance ends up hitting that ceiling, I think he's going to end up having that Patrick Mahomes-like season when Patrick Mahomes just burst out onto the scene and not too many people knew what to expect from Patrick Mahomes. And then Andy Reid just let him loose and he ended up winning MVP. And I think if Trey Lance ends up being that, I think the 49ers could end up being maybe the best team in the NFC, and potentially they could end up winning the division. Because think about it this way. What are things that Jimmy Garoppolo lacked that Trey Lance has? The first thing is the ability to throw under pressure. You see, Jimmy Garoppolo was never good with pressure in his face. Trey Lance, even though he struggled a little bit last year under pressure, a good trait about him coming out of North Dakota State was that he had a very good arm, and the fact that he didn't really get phased when he had pressure in his face. Another thing is that you're going to have a different element in the run game because Jimmy Garoppolo pretty much didn't really offer you nothing in that department. Trey Lance is a really good athlete. He has great straight line speed. Now, he's not really the most elusive runner, but he is somebody that if you do give him a lane, he's going to make you pay because he has incredible speed. He also has very great size as well. So for the San Francisco 49ers, if Trey Lance ends up being as good as what 49ers fans and myself think that he can be, I think the sky is the limit for this team, which is why I have them at 13-4. 8-9 is my worst case scenario for the 49ers because, okay, what if we're all wrong about Trey Lance? And what if Trey Lance has another season where he kind of is up and down? He has some high moments, but he also has some low moments. And that definitely can happen because on this podcast, we have to look at all of the possibilities. We just can't look at things from a one-sided perspective. So this is where the worst case comes in. If the worst happens and Trey Lance isn't really all that consistent, I still think that the 49ers have a good enough team that they can end up winning 8 games. Now, 8 games may be good enough to get you the 7th seed simply for the fact that the NFC doesn't look all that strong this year. But at the same time, you do have a really good defense that can bail you out and give you additional possessions and help you if your offense does struggle to get off on a good foot. But another concern that I have is simply for the fact that, you look at the offensive line, okay? You had Alex Mack, who ended up retiring. You had a couple of losses on the O-line, so you do have some positions of concern. Don't really know how good the center position is going to be. What about your other offensive guard spots? So those definitely are some huge concerns that I have when it comes to the 49ers on the offensive side of the ball. Is going to be their offensive line, because if you're going to make sure that Trey Lance has success, you definitely have to make sure that you have a good offensive line in front of him, because you don't want the guy running for his life for the whole entire season. Now, my overall record prediction for San Francisco is going to be 10-7. Now, the first half of the season for San Francisco, I think is pretty easy. I think that San Francisco has one of the more easier first half schedules than any other team going into this season. Their first 3 games, they're playing Chicago, Seattle, and Denver. Those are all 3 winnable games. They should be at least 2-1 going into that Monday night matchup against the Rams to start off the month of October. Then you play Carolina and Atlanta. Both of those games are going to be on the road. You should be able to win both of those 2 games, but maybe you could drop that Carolina game depending on how Baker Mayfield and that offense gels at that point. But then this is where things get really difficult for San Francisco. So 2 weeks before your bye week, you're playing Kansas City and you're playing the LA Rams. And then you go into your bye week. And then this is where you start to go through a gauntlet of potential playoff teams. Okay, you're playing the Chargers on Sunday night, Arizona on the road Monday night. You got New Orleans, Miami, Tampa Bay. You get to play Seattle, which you should be able to take business. Well, you should be able to take care of business there, even though it is on the road on a short week. Maybe that could end up being a upset game there. Then you got Washington, Las Vegas, and Arizona to close off the season. So you're pretty much facing 9 potential playoff teams to close the end of your season after having a really pretty easy first half of your schedule. So for the 49ers, I definitely feel like they could end up having a couple of bumps and bruises on their way to the postseason. And even if Trey Lance does play well, the offensive line is still a big lingering concern that I have in my head, and I think that it will cost them a couple of games. So my record prediction for them, I have them at 10-7. I was really close to having them at 11-6, maybe 12-5, but that's what the best case scenario is. If the offensive line ends up playing well and Trey Lance also plays well, then they definitely could end up winning 13 games. But I'm going to go with 10-7. You guys let me know your record predictions for the San Francisco 49ers down in the comment section down below.